Today we're going to be making a seasonal tortellini using the butternut squash and mascarpone as a filling. And we're also going to be highlighting a technique in making pasta using the hot water method, which allows starch gelatinization, gives us more elasticity on the dough so it won't crack.
Please help us create new informative content by giving this video a thumbs up and sharing it on social media with everyone you know. Don't forget to subscribe to the Op Food channel and turn your notifications on so you are the first to learn about new episodes when they are posted. Now back to this delicious video.
Start out with the ingredients of the filling. Today we're going to be using the butternut squash, which we will roast. We're also going to be using 1 cup of mascarpone cheese, 1 egg, a stick of cinnamon, and a little bit of nutmeg. The second set of ingredients are going to be for the pasta. Today we're going to be using 2 cups of flour, to 3 eggs, to 1 cup of saffron water. In our pasta today we're also going to add a teaspoon of salt. So now for the preparation of the butternut squash filling, we're going to start with butternut squash. We are going to slice open the butternut squash. We are going to remove the seeds, and then we are going to score the squash vertically and then horizontally. This speeds up the process of cooking the squash. After which, you're going to take some olive oil and you're going to oil your pan. You don't need that much, just a little bit. And then you're going to place all the pieces of squash into the pan. I like to put it upside, skin exposed. This creates more of a steaming process instead of a caramelization process on the squash. After which we're going to move it to the oven at 350 degrees for 40 minutes. Alrighty, to make the filling after the butternut squash has come out of the oven, we need a food processor. This makes the work a lot quicker. In it, you're going to put in 2 cups of the filling of the butternut squash. I'm eyeballing it, but y'all could measure it out. So the ratio would be 2 cups of butternut squash to 1 cup of mascarpone cheese. There goes the mascarpone. I also like to use whole spices. Whole spices have a much more aromatic presence. So if you were to measure this at the house, it would be 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. This tool here is called a microplane. And 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And 1 egg. Now we're going to move into the processing state. And this here is what the filling should look like at the end. So now we're going to move on to making pasta, and I make my pasta in a food processor, which a lot of people don't. They like to make it on the table by hand, or they use a KitchenAid, a dough process. I do a process called balling stage. And what I look for is the size of the ball that the pasta makes. The more moisture, the bigger the ball. The less moisture, the smaller the ball. So I use this process in the food processor, which I'll show you how you can adjust the texture of your pasta inside the bowl. All right, so we're going to be using a unique process in making the pasta today. We're going to be using a hot water method. Today I've infused a little bit of saffron with 1 cup of water. I bring the water just to a simmer. You don't really want to boil it. It just needs to get hot. So I've done that in this pan here. Now I have my hot water to start the gelatinization process. This gives my dough a lot more elasticity, which allows me to work the dough longer. Also, it prevents my little tortellinis from breaking or cracking, drying out. So this process is going to require 2 cups of flour. Okay, you just place straight into your food processor. This processor really speeds up the the amount of time. And I go ahead and I add my 3 eggs. I also add 1 teaspoon of salt. And now I'm going to start my mixing process. So you're going to see that the moisture from the eggs, and this is starting the process of the balling stage, and you're going to be able to see that the flour itself looks like a small grain. This is because the pasta is still dry. I don't have all the liquid in yet. As I add more liquid, the balling stage will become bigger, larger. Now I'm going to start to pour in my infused hot saffron water. And you're going to see that in this stage, the balls are going to start to get larger. See how it's gotten larger? Okay, so now I'm making sure that my pasta has the right moisture. My dough does, and this is it. If the pasta, what you're looking for here is when you have the pasta, it doesn't stick to your hands as you're working with it. This means that you have the right amount of moisture. I also still have some small or medium balling stage, and that's what I'm looking for in the bowl. Knowing that my pasta is has the right enough amount of moisture in it. You're also going to see that the saffron gives the pasta dough a nice yellow color. Oh, it is gelatinization. Like when hot water hits starch at 212 degrees, really, it starts to turn it into like a gelatinous mixture. Like when you break bread, you know, it's like a dough. It starts out with that moist, so everything congeals, and then bread is just the process of dehydration of that water afterwards. All right, so then the next step with the pasta is after you made the dough, you really want to rest it for about an hour. By doing this, I just cover it, put it in the container, cover it, put it into the fridge. Then I'm ready to go ahead and make my pasta. If you try to start rolling your pasta without resting, it's just going to want to keep shrinking up as you roll out the dough. So the next phase is dealing with the pasta. Now with raviolis, because you're working with it on the table for a longer period of time, you really want to cover the dough as you're working with it. Try to keep as much moisture as you can. I just use another cup and put it on top of the dough of what I'm not using. When I go to work with it, because we've used the hot water method, we're going to be able to work this dough a lot longer than if we just tried a traditional pasta method. So now we're going to, one of the processes of making a good pasta dough is developing gluten, and that food processor helps a lot because it processes the dough a lot quicker than you can by your hands. But the second way of also trying to knead the dough is using a pasta roller. These aren't very expensive. You can get them online now for about 20 bucks. You can find these motors to attach to them if you like, make the process easier. But a lot of you also have KitchenAids that you'll have the dough attachment to. It can work the same way. So what I do from here is I take a portion of the dough. I like to pat it on each end with a little bit of flour. I like to flour my table as well. And then we're going to start with using the pasta machine to roll and knead our dough, and we're going to roll out. Now it's very important when making raviolis that the dough is at the right diameter. If it's too thick, it's going to be a chewy ravioli. Definitely not something that you want. So here I'm going to show you that the dough itself, the sheet, once we roll it out, has to be set on the last setting on your pasta machine, and it needs to be almost able to see through the dough. So I'll show you once we get it rolled out. So to start the process, I start with the machine at the widest angle. And I'm going to let the machine start rolling the dough. Now you're going to notice that on the first go around, it's going to be really rough because I really need to start developing the gluten. The more what I do is I just fold it over. The more I work it, the smoother the dough will become. So at this point, I'm going to keep working the dough until I get the texture that I want. And at this point, you can tell my dough is a lot smoother. Now once I get it to about this texture, I'm going to start to dial down the machine 1 unit at a time. So these units go, on this machine goes from 1 to 10. So I started at 10, I'm going to dial down all the way till I get to a 1. At this point, I'm not going to fold my dough anymore. I'm just going to start rolling it. I'm going to dial it down by 1. Now I have one last trick to show y'all in making the dough. Is I create a belt system to where I don't have to keep going in and out of the machine by connecting the doughs. Now I just let the machine do the work. This is rolled out on a 0. So to determine the thickness that you want, the dough needs to be translucent, and you can see that you can definitely see my fingers through the dough. This means that the dough is thin enough now for the tortellini application. Now we're moving on to the next phase, which is cutting and shaping the tortellini. In this process, we're taking our dough sheet that we've already rolled out, and we're going to take a ring cutter that's about 3 inches wide to make the tortellini. From here, we're going to cut the dough to form round discs. And now to shape the tortellini, we're going to put the dough right in the middle of your ring finger. From this process, you're going to put the filling. And you don't want to put too much. If you put too much, then it's going to want to leak out the sides, but you just put the filling right in the middle on your ring finger. You don't want any of the filling to be on the edges. If it's on the edge, it won't seal properly. So a lot of people like to use egg whites, but I use water to seal the dough. When you use egg whites, it turns the outside of the ravioli to kind of like chewing gum. It's really tough. From here, I only put water on one edge, and I fold the ends over to make kind of a half moon, or what the Italians call a mezzaluna. And then I seal the pasta to my fillings right in the middle. So this is called a mezzaluna. From here, the second step to this in the shaping process is to turn the mezzaluna upside down where the flat end is facing up. From here, you're going to take the right end and fold it underneath the left end. So once they're there, you connect the two ends, therefore giving you something that looks like a tortellini. So the next step in making your tortellinis, now that we've shaped them, is knowing what to do with them. You have two options. One, you can spread them out onto a plate individually and then freeze them. You want to do this before you package them, otherwise they're going to clump together and you're going to have clumps of tortellini. So what I do is I put this in the freezer until they're, for about 2 hours. Then I take them out and then I put them into a bucket, and this allows me to have individually frozen tortellinis when I want to use them. So the next step in cooking a fresh pasta is starting your water to get to a boil. I put a little bit of salt, about 1 tablespoon of salt per quart of water, and I bring it up to a boil. The next step is just boiling your pasta. In this case, because it's a fresh pasta, it's going to take about 45 seconds. If it's at a frozen state, 1 minute. So from here, you want to make sure that you put all the pasta that you're going to be doing at one time in the water at the same time so that they cook evenly. If you want to put them in one by one, then they're not going to cook evenly. Some are going to be overcooked, some undercooked. So it's kind of an important phase here to put them all in at the one time. When you're putting these tortellini in the water, you want to make sure that you get close to the boiling water so it doesn't splash up on you and burn you. So I get as close as I can and put them in gently, all at one time. So while my pasta are boiling, I have a bowl already prepared with a little bit of butter in them. Once my pasta start to cook, another important step is to actually dry the pasta. If you have too much water left over on your pasta and you mix it in with the bowl, then things don't stick to the pasta like a sauce or butter. In this case, what you want to do is dry the pasta out of the water until it gets tacky enough to adhere to a sauce. So this is what we call a la minute cooking, which means on the minute. So this isn't a phase that you can prepare ahead of time. You have to do this as you're putting out the pasta. So our pasta has been in here for about 45 seconds. We're now going to pull the pasta out of the water. And now I'm going to dry the pasta just by holding it over the heat. I make sure that all the water is dripped out of the strainer. Make sure there's no excess water going into the bowl. So at this point, my pasta is getting to a tacky state, which is what I want. So I make sure that the butter will adhere to the pasta. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the plating phase. In doing this, you can choose any sauce that you want to pair with the butternut squash tortellini. I prepared a amaretto cream sauce. Now in plating these in the final, I chose a unique bowl to plate up. Y'all can plate like you like. In this case, I like to put the sauce on the bottom because you have these beautiful tortellini. From here, I just plate up. I'm going to serve about 5 of these per portion. Everyone likes Parmesan, so we will put a little Parmesan. I think it will go well with this dish. And I've chosen some baby watercress. These are hydroponically grown microgreens. And that would be the final plate.
Thank you for watching our video. If you found the information informative, please leave a positive comment below. You can help us create new informative content by giving this video a thumbs up and sharing it on social media with everyone you know. Don't forget to subscribe to the Op Food channel and turn your notifications on so you are the first to learn about new episodes when they are posted. Bon appetit and God bless.